Jeff, the host of the Gridiron.
Fourth and goal to go with the 2. 34 seconds left to go in the ball game. This is the play right now. Takes the snap. Targeted goes in. Targeted all alone. And the quarterback keeps. Wow, what a call. Nobody touched him.
Yeah. There's still some guys out there. 3 best trade targets for the Giants. Now, the one nice thing about trades, right, is a lot of it is, you can obviously go for guys, and you want to trade, like Noah Fant there, right? Just spoiler alert. Well, you pick the phone up and say, hey, look, looking to trade, right? Because maybe not this year, but the Giants need to do something with their tight ends. But once again, you got a lot of holes, right? It is what it is. We still need to have some holes, but we definitely need to beef up the tight end, department. Well, I said with Noah Fant, you call, you pick the phone up and you say, hey, okay, we'll give you whatever. We'll give you a 4th round pick if you pick up half his salary. If you don't want to pick up his salary, we'll give you a 5th round pick or whatever. Right? It's like, let's make a deal. Right? But there are some guys out there, right? Well, maybe the Giants can go after. Remember Noah Fant, he was the one. Let's see. He had like a 60-yard touchdown pass. I think like 342 Giants had chances, just like trying to like tackle the guy or knock him out of bounds. And I just don't know why we just couldn't do that. But he ran all the way down the sideline for a touchdown. Oh my goodness. All right, but anyway. Okay, so 3 best trade targets to round out the Giants' 2025 roster. 3 players the Giants need to trade for in 2025 offseason to fill out their roster ahead of training camp. So far, the Giants' offseason has gone nearly according to plan. After making multiple splashes in free agency, General Manager Joe Schoen had one of the best drafts of his career in April. That's fair. With training camps on deck, the Giants roster is nearly complete, with just a few trade targets around the league who can tie up loose ends. Definitely, without question. Now, what I would love to, we could really use, obviously, another weapon, without question. Definitely another weapon. Now the thing is, I like I like the wide receivers we have, but we could use another weapon. Now the thing is, it would wind up being very costly, of course, to go out and get a wide receiver weapon, or could be costly. But if we don't add to the wide receivers, I would love if we can add quite possibly to the tight end room. Now, if we don't do it this season, we'll do it next season. Right? Let's see. So after not so subtly taking the second half of the 2020-24 season, the Giants were forced to make major changes in the offseason. Shockingly, despite the relatively bare market, Schoen managed to land some of the biggest fish in the sea. Like I said, they landed Holland, Adebo, Russell Wilson. Don't forget about Chauncey Golston, too. Don't forget about him. Schoen rode the momentum into the draft, where he hauled in 7 more players, led by oh, man, I can't wait to see Abdul Carter, man. Oh, man, I'm so excited to see him. Man. Where we landed Abdul Carter, the highly touted edge rusher, topped the class. But the Giants also traded up for Jackson Dart, their presumed quarterback of the future. Time will tell. Potential late-round gems Marcus and Bo and Cam Scatterboo rounded out an exciting crop of talent that managed to get many skeptical fans back in on the team, back in on the bandwagon, baby. Even with the stellar offseason so far, New York still has a couple of areas to address. A 4-13 team is not fixed by a handful of free agents and a solid rookie class. Shane has a couple of months remaining until training camp begins, giving him time to compile a list of trade targets to complete the Giants roster. So now the first guy they're talking about, okay, is Cobie Durant, a cornerback from the Rams. Now, never hurts to have good cornerback depth. Absolutely not. Never hurts. Giants had easily one of the worst secondaries in 2024, but addressed that dire need in free agency by bringing in Adebo and Holland. Adebo gives the team a lockdown cornerback for the first time in years, alleviating pressure off former first-round pick Deonte Banks. However, behind Adebo and Banks, New York lacks depth at cornerback. Well, we got Phillips, we got Flott, okay, but we could certainly use some depth. Absolutely. Drew Phillips and Tyler Nubin were the lone bright spots in the team's secondary during 2024. With Phillips locking down the slot and Nubin displaying elite pursuit, both showed their ability to develop into premier players of their respective positions. Holland pairs nicely with Nubin on paper, making outside cornerback the biggest question mark. So, in theory, Adebo's inclusion will help Banks, who took a significant step back in his second year. His supposed locker room issues led to a surprising benching in Week 8. After Adebo criticized his effort on a missed tackle, ideally, Adebo gives Banks the luxury of covering the opposing number 2 wideout instead of the best pass catcher in the league. However, with Adebo below average shadow rate and his recovery from a broken femur, he's still not an automatic solution to New York's issues. The Giants still need more veteran depth at cornerback, making Cobie Durant a viable trade target. Durant started 14 games last season, posted an above-average 63.7 player grade, according to PFF, on 449 coverage snaps. Yet, despite his improvements, he remains buried on the Rams' depth chart. His services are expendable and should be available for a mid to late round pick. Giants want to see improvements in Banks, but he was statistically one of the league's worst cornerbacks in 2024. They need to give themselves insurance on what otherwise it could be potentially an elite defense. Then they talk about Noah Fant from the Seahawks, the tight end. Giants will likely need to see what their offense looks like before making any further offensive judgments. But tight end remains one of the biggest question marks on the roster. Absolutely. New York is slated to begin the year with Theo Johnson, who showed promise as a rookie, but had the season cut short by a foot fracture. Behind Johnson, the Giants have veterans Bellinger, who just seems to be disappearing. Hey. Greg Dulcich and Chris Manhertz on the roster, in addition to the 7th-round rookie Thomas Fidone II. Fidone is the most intriguing of the group, but is much closer to beginning his career on the practice squad than being a day-one contributor. The declining state of the tight end gives Shane options, but his best might be Seattle Seahawks Noah Fant. New York needs a temporary solution more than a permanent one, which is the role Fant serves at this point in his career. Former first-round pick, Fant was once viewed as a potential game changer. However, ahead of his 7th season, the Seahawks are evidently ready to move on. 1 year after taking A.J. Barner in the 4th round, Seattle used its 2025 second-round pick on another tight end. With Fant on the outskirts of the roster, Seattle would gladly field any offers. His asking price will not be high, and Shane could lower it even further with the right offer. Seahawks desperately need interior offensive line help, making one of Aaron Stinney, Greg Van Roten, or John Runyon a valuable addition. Well, I don't think we're giving up John Runyon, but Then the last guy they have here would be safety, which we could use some depth at. J.T. Gray of the Saints. Giants made many notable offensive and defensive additions in the offseason thus far, but have not done much to address their special teams issues in 2024. Their special teams issues from 2024. The often overlooked area of the game has been a blind spot on the team for multiple seasons. Well, Shane has brought in a lot of guys who have excelled on special teams. New York does not have to be ultra aggressive in this aspect, but trading for an asset or two over the summer would pay dividends. Perhaps mental fatigue was to blame, but New York was hardly been adept at kickoffs or punt coverage. They ranked in the bottom 10 in kickoff yards and punt return yards allowed in 2024, making them one of the worst special teams units in the league. Giants acquired special teams standouts Chris Board, Ty Summers in free agency, but could still use one more piece. Consistent special teams aces are harder to find than in the modern NFL, but J.T. Gray is one of those few remaining. While hardly seeing the field as a safety, Gray recorded 19 special teams tackles in 2024, which is a lot of tackles, which was the third most in the league. With only two players ahead of him on the Washington Commanders, Gray is the best special teams player the Giants can realistically target for a potential trade. Gray will be difficult to pry from the Saints as a special teams captain, but he is not untouchable. Shane could pry on New Orleans' dysfunctional quarterback situation by offering either Jameson Winston or Tommy DeVito. Winston, who played for the Saints from 2020 to 2023, is well accustomed to the organization. Offering a trade of that magnitude would likely give the Giants additional draft capital in return. New York plans to sit Dart behind its veteran quarterbacks in 2024, but potentially trading Winston or DeVito still allows them to do so. The historically durable Wilson is still locked in as a starter, giving Dart the pseudo red shirt season Dable envisions. So, there's definitely, without question, without question. I mean, the Giants easily need, some depth. I mean, we certainly did not fill out the roster. Certainly wind up always having some holes to fill. And even as I said, I mean, the one thing is that even if you feel kind of comfortable, especially on the defensive side, right, you can always use depth, and especially if some of those depth players can be standouts at special teams. That would be huge. That would be huge for the Giants, especially if you get them for some later round draft picks, and if you want to get them and sign them, maybe keeping them for a few years or so, that would be huge. So, something to think about. Certainly something to think about.